Good afternoon. Welcome to the weekly livestock market update. I'm Brownfield anchor reporter Meghan Grebner, with us as always to talk all things markets. University of Missouri livestock economist Scott Brown. Good afternoon, Scott.
Good afternoon, Megan.
Happy Friday to you.
Yeah, likewise. I'm glad to be to the end of the week, given all the snow again this week.
Well, I've not had snow. I think we were looking for our ark here in Kentucky with the amount of rain that we've had over the last couple of days. But I'm glad you are safe, knowing some of the weather you guys have had in your part of the country.
It's been a tough couple days again, but coming out the other side with 60 degrees this weekend.
Mother Nature will get it together at some point, at least hopefully.
That's right.
All right. It's a pretty light week for us. So we get to have a pretty in-depth conversation about price transparency and competition in the markets. And we'll do that coming up in a couple of minutes. But to kick things off, let's recap what happened this week in the markets.
Yeah, Megan, this week on the cattle side of the equation, cash cattle were $1.90 higher on the week. Those feeder cattle markets were softer this week. They were anywhere from $2 to $5 lower on the week. On the future side, the April live cattle futures contract closed down 55 cents, and the March feeder cattle contract was down $1.10. Choice box beef price was also lower this week, down about $6.20. That still puts it nearly $34 above where it was a year ago at this time. On the hog side, cash hogs $5.60 higher this week. April lean hog futures were also much stronger, up $7 on the week. The pork cutout value also gained nearly $8.40 on the week. We had strength across the board in all those components of that pork cutout value, but yet again, hams and bellies are leading the way up strong this week.
If they were an emoji, they would probably be the fire emoji, because every day this week it has been nothing but sharply higher.
Although I'll date myself, it reminds me of the NBA Jam game where after you hit three-pointers in a row, you were on fire. Those two prices are certainly doing that.
Is that your version of the emoji today?
That's right. That's the old man's version of the emoji, Megan.
We'll take it. All right. So let's talk slaughter numbers, I think, before we get into it, because typically for the last few months or several months, we've been seeing, especially on the hog side, running lower on the slaughter side. When we take a look, or when we talk about these numbers in comparison, I guess we should probably remember that it wasn't a great week for weather in 2021 as we take that comparison.
Yeah, that's right. We'll make sure that we don't think that's going to continue. But USDA gave us for the week ending February 19th a run of 663,000 cattle this week. That's actually up 4,000 head from where we were a week ago, and up 114,000 head from where we were a year ago. And again, that bad weather of 2021 really affected cattle slaughter. On the hog side, a run this week of 2.507 million head of hogs. That's down slightly, down 9,000 head relative to a week ago. But same week a year ago, that's up 94,000 head. Again, cold weather played the role there. We'll be back on the other side of those numbers as we look at next week.
All right. So we continue to have conversations about price transparency, price discovery, competition in the markets. And as we get into that conversation today, I want to start with where are we at in today in terms of farm to wholesale prices, because I think that's something that's a great setup for where we're going to go.
Yeah, that's right. So, Megan, you look back at 2021, and the data from the Livestock Marketing Information Center for me kind of really sets the stage here. We were talking about a spread that was $1,100 an animal back at some of the highs of 2021. Once we got by about week 34 or so of last year, we've been trailing off from those very high levels, and we ended the year with a spread of about $400. We've started 2021 and we moved up a little. Sorry, 2022, and we moved up a little bit, but again, we've kind of fallen back off. We're sitting here about $400. That's certainly not back to where we were pre-COVID, pre-plant fire in Kansas. those margins looked much more like $200, but it's a far cry from the $1,800 we saw in the very worst of COVID-19 in 2020. So moving in the right direction. I will say part of that's just changes in runs of cattle that I think have been helpful to narrow those margins as packers maybe beginning to have to bid a little bit harder for animals. But that sets the stage, and I will continue to remind us that fewer cattle as we go through 2022 likely gets these margins to move even lower as we get further into 2022.
I think it's interesting to see how things have moved. Obviously, we're moving back into a more normal pattern, but part of that is because we have an ability to have transparency in the markets when we talk about this. And as we look at that, today was kind of the deadline day, right, for that continuing resolution, which included funding and extension or funding to keep LMR or livestock mandatory reporting funded. That kind of gets kicked down the road a little bit again. But I think we have to have the conversation is what happens if we don't have that data and that information available to us?
Yeah. So I think sometimes there's always some who will say, I'm happy to get rid of LMR, mandatory livestock reporting of prices. And I will say folks need to go back to 2013 when we had government shutdown that made us not be reporting LMR data for a period of time. And I'll say markets, both cattle and hogs, I think struggled with, well, how do we pay without those reports being published by AMS? So I would say we want to be cautious here. Getting rid of mandatory livestock reporting has consequences that I don't think we're going to be that excited about because it's less information than that's available. And oftentimes when you end up in a situation with less information, those that have private ways to try to collect the data will be ahead of those that don't have that avenue. So I continue to say I hope we get longer term LMR reauthorization. It's nice that we avoided the bullet of this current CR and can live for another few days, but won't be long until we'll be back on this topic yet again.
So March 11th is that date. And I should probably maybe for those who may not know how LMR works or livestock mandatory reporting works, it requires meat packers to report their purchases of sales and livestock products to USDA. And then USDA aggregates that data and we're able to share it with you, but it also keeps everybody accountable. Does the whole competition and price transparency conversation kind of, in your eyes, start with LMR? Like our ability to build this data and this information and to keep people accountable, does it start there?
So I think Meghan, it does start there. Again, without that data, I think we then know a lot less about markets today. So I think anytime we want to talk about price discovery, these are the data series we have to work with today. So we need that data to make sure we kind of have some idea of, do we have good transparency? Do we have good price discovery? That's the data we have to work with. So for those out there, I will take a little aside here to say that AMS data that's reported via LMR, there's a lot of data. I think sometimes it's hard to interpret everything that's in the AMS data that's available to us. AMS has been working hard. They have a couple of new reports that they've put out in the last several months related to cattle LMR data. I also encourage folks, though, now to download their app. So there's a phone app that also lists all of this AMS data. I just encourage folks to get as familiar with the data that's being kept under LMR as they can, as they make decisions about whether or not we're getting good price discovery or not. That to me is the data source that we have to have.
When we talk about this in terms of legislation, right? So it's tied into this continuing resolution to make sure it remains funded. Are we better served to see it maybe a long-term, not long-term, or a mid-range solution? So another round of funding or longer-term funding, and give some chance to have some real work done to improve it, to provide the information that the industry wants and needs to see?
I think it would be good to have some longer term solutions so that we're not talking about reauthorization of LMR on a regular basis. Again, I think there's going to be a varied amount of opinions about whether that's good or not. I will just keep saying getting reported price information is key here, and we don't have many other options, available to us right now except some of that LMR data.
All right, Scott, it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. We may be having this conversation again in about 3 weeks, because that's when the funding is set to expire again, unless the House and the Senate can get a long-term bill put together.
Yeah, that's right. And as folks are listening, I remind them of, so to me, one of the things that's been happening is that we've come to a situation where I think some have lost trust in markets and cattle pricing today. And most important is, how do we really fix that? We talk about it oftentimes as better price discovery, but for me, making sure that we report prices that maybe build confidence and trust in the way we're pricing cattle is really important. And I don't have the right answer to some of this, but I just continue to remind myself that we are seeing producers who I think are concerned about whether or not we're losing confidence in those markets. And economies of scale have mattered here, and I think it's added to this lack of confidence. So we have lots of work left to do, and we'll continue to try to search for ways to make sure that cattle markets and cattle pricing work in a way that the industry as a whole can move forward with.
And it will give us plenty to talk about in the coming weeks and months and years.
It will be something that will certainly be going on well down the road. We aren't going to fix this in a matter of days, and we'll continue, I think, to have to come back over time to think about how to best price cattle as the cattle industry continues to change over the next several years.
Scott, that'll do it for us this week. Next week's reports.
Yeah, so we start with cold storage. We get a little livestock slaughter and finish the week with another cattle on feed report.
All right, we'll talk to you then. Have a great weekend.
You do the same, Megan.
To have our weekly livestock market update delivered to your email box every Saturday morning, go to brownfieldagnews.com. If you want to submit questions and comments, you can do that there as well. And for some great listening material while you are on the road, go to brownfieldagnews.com/podcast. Have a great weekend. I'm Meghan Grebner for Brownfield.